Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company, the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Zane Courtney.
And if you've noticed, today I'm all bundled up, and Zane is here in shorts and a short sleeve shirt. It's not summer here in Phoenix, but he must be feeling warm. I'm not.
Cold weather birds, it kind of feels like summer. Especially yesterday, it was pretty toasty outside, so I'm just gearing up for it.
But yeah, within a couple of months, there will be no more beanie, no more thick jacket, and we'll be back to summer garb here in Phoenix. Again, welcome TickTock, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. We've got so many platforms here. Spotify.
Later today, Spotify.
Yeah.
Twitter.
We'd love to hear from all of you guys, not only what platform you're coming in on, but where you're from and your name, of course, and we'll try to answer all of the questions. Look like we've got YouTube. Pino Mastrani, good morning from Windsor, Ontario, Canada.
Hey, good morning, Pino. Yeah, no, you guys really do run the show. We were just telling TickTock earlier today, we love that we get to basically do the show with you guys, so please keep sending us your comments. If we don't get to them today, we'll be sure to get to them on our next show. We try to do the best we can with getting everybody, so yeah, please stick around. We'd probably be able to answer your question.
Yeah, so the picture behind us, not for TickTock, we're almost there but not quite. There's a picture of the Sanctuary Resort in Phoenix, Arizona, just north of Camelback Mountain. And Phoenix is known for a number of over-the-top resorts, some of them 5-star even. And it is definitely a destination during winter here because of our warm weather. We get a lot of winter visitors. And Super Bowl, our population swelled by just over 1 million people. I was driving home days before Super Bowl was happening that week, and I thought to myself, where's all this traffic coming from?
It was like every night was First Friday.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
We also had the Waste Management Open.
Yeah, right, on the same weekend.
Yep. Waste Management Open. But anyway, one of the first pictures I wanted to pop up here for you guys is, do you remember last week we showed what we thought was the inspiration for the Tesla key fob, the Tesla Model S and Model X key fob? And it was a 1953 Alfa Romeo Bertone Bat 5 Coupe. Well,
that's a Batmobile.
We did a little bit more research, and check this out. Can we throw up the side view image of that car? It turns out that this car looks different from every single angle that you attack this from. It is quite a design challenge.
Yeah, look at that.
Lots of curves on that.
That's really the same car. And because we were looking at the rear before.
The top view, the rear and a top view. So you might be curious, who designed this? By the way, throw up some more of those images, guys, and you'll see that, Bruce Wayne, every single angle, it looks, look at those fins in the back.
That's magnificent.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, Pete.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I had myself muted. One thing that I do see that the front looks different on some of these. See how this one's kind of caved in? It's got these red lines here.
Well, there was a Bat 5, a Bat 7, and a Bat 9.
Then we've got these ones down here.
Designed,
there we go. The Bat family.
There we go. There was an auction at Sotheby's last year where 3 of these early versions of this Alfa Romeo sold as a package deal for just under $15 million.
What a steal.
The designer was an Italian, Franco Scaglione. And he was a military man with an aeronautical engineering background, which makes sense because, the type of aerodynamics you see here are unprecedented during that time period until they got wind tunnels later on in the 70s where they were starting to focus on aerodynamics. Makes things go faster because you're not pushing as much air. But
a certain gas crisis in the 70s probably inspired some movement.
But it was the aeronautical designers that first paid attention to aerodynamics. It's probably where the term comes from. And this is reminiscent also of the World War II guys, the Brits, who were designing airplanes for the RAF during World War II. After the war, they had nothing to do because the war was over. They didn't need to build more military airplanes, so a lot of them went into the car business, or started working for car manufacturers, and that's why those 50s Jaguars look like an airplane.
Oh yeah,
Same type of curves.
The design style was everywhere. If you saw the old Impalas, the old SSs, the old, all the American cars especially had big old turbines and fins. Yeah, it looks like that, and that stayed clearly through the 70s.
So a bit more history about Franco Scaglione. He tried to get a job with Battista Pininfarina, who is the designer for the Ferraris, and I think Lamborghini as well. He ended up settling with another legendary car manufacturer, Nuccio Bertone. He was making one-of commission cars for wealthy clients, and the business was suffering until he found Scaglione and started building cars that look like this. So anyway, that's the history on this special car. Looks like we have some questions here that we can
Right on from YouTube. Mitchell Barnow. Not Alfa Romeo. Yeah, you know, it's funny. Alfa Romeo is not a car company that pops up particularly often anymore. You don't hear them making a lot of evolutions or anything like that.
Yep. TickTock. M. Johnson 119. Welcome. If you're new to us, the question that usually comes up when they first join us, is the sun too bright in there?
Yes. I mean, look
yes.
outside.
Yeah.
Look at all this beautiful resort in the background.
Then we've got an Instagram from Magvel in Brazil. He's watching us. Very good.
Wonderful.
All right. So we've got another item here for you. I pay attention to Quora. If you're not on that, or if you're not familiar with that, it's a great place. You can select certain themes, and people get a chance to ask questions, and some of them are downright silly. You know, does Elon Musk like hamburgers? Well, how the hell would we know?
It is the internet's frequently asked questions.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Quora.
But, so one of them was, why are there so few wrecks on the German Autobahn? Can we throw up that video, guys? And I'm going to show you something. I go to Germany at least every 3 years because I was born there. Now watch what happens here. We're sitting in a BMW. Did you notice a red blur? And this guy's going at 100 kilometers an hour, which is about 60 miles an hour.
Let me play that again just for those
And
who
it looks
missed
like he's standing still.
Boom.
There we go.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And you know what? The only reason that the Germans can get away with not having speed limits outside the urban areas on the Autobahn is because they have a highly disciplined, educated, well-trained group of drivers, and the German DNA is rule following, which has an upside and downside, of course, but they are one of the best driving population on the planet. And you can literally, bank on the fact that if you're doing 200 miles an hour in that passing lane, no one's going to be distracted doing their makeup, on their cell phone, watching their pet dog on the front seat, and pull into your passing lane without watching behind you. And the lane discipline that they adhere to requires that you stay in the right lanes unless you need to pass someone, and then you get back in that right lane. So that's the reason they're able to get away with it. Now, why are the Germans such great drivers? Well, there's another reason for that. Here in the United States, the bad drivers educate the next generation. Who did you learn to drive from? Probably your parents, right? Your brother, your sister, right? They got trained by your parents. In Germany, parents don't train the next generation drivers. They have to go to a 6-month school, they have to spend thousands of euros, and they get trained by professionals that teach them driving skills. So if you're driving in Germany, you're going to notice that you're going to be exposed to a completely different type of driving. No red light runners, again, rule following. No hogging lanes. They stay to the right, and it's perfectly safe on the Autobahn to cruise at whatever speed you want because the drivers follow lane discipline.
It's also its own discipline because they have their own license specifically for the Autobahn. Is that right?
No, there is no special license for that.
Oh.
Yeah. And of course, if we were to drop speed limits on our freeways here, I believe that in one generation, the Darwin rule would apply, survival of the fittest, and we would flush out this generation of crappy drivers. Of course, a whole lot of other innocent people would end up dying, but I don't think we can ever do that here in the U.S. because of the distracted drivers we have. I had a guy this morning on the way to work, ran a red light, and I'm a defensive driver. I used to ride a motorcycle. And like Richard, you become hyper aware of all your surroundings. You're constantly looking for exit paths, in case something happens. And I always look to the left and right before I pull out into an intersection, even though I have the green light or the arrow. And sure enough, this bozo's coming along, plowed right through that red light. Luckily, no one got killed.
Hell yeah.
I was going to say, Pete, if that were to happen in the States, we would get rid of, I'd say, like 95% of motorcycle riders, not from their own fault, but from other people, again, not paying attention and just doing their own thing.
That's the scariest part of being a motorcycle driver is the risk of other drivers.
Right. Too many distractions. And all right, so it looks like we got a question from Instagram.
From Rick G 2022, how fast is fast? That's a good question, actually, because the average speed limit in the U.S. for highways is 65. In town, you're looking at 35, 45, depending on the road. 20, less than 20 when you're going through neighborhoods. How fast is fast?
Well, here on the freeways, ever since the police defunding stuff took place, I've noticed that
and COVID.
And COVID, yeah. The police officers aren't as focused on revenue-generating radar traps anymore. So I did notice an increase in speed. People are doing about 10 to 15 miles more than they used to. When
10
they
to
had
15
all
over is the average now, yeah.
That's the average, yeah. The cameras were everywhere, remember, and you never knew when they would pop up, and they would trick you. Over on Shea and Cactus, Shea and Scottsdale Road, they have a camera that catches speeders. It's 45 miles an hour until about 500 feet from the light, and then it drops to 40. And that's what that camera is set to. Well, you're not going to know there's that. I mean, there's all kinds of buildings and stores and everything. Who's going to look at that speed limit sign, right? And who's going to anticipate that it dropped on you? But anyway, dirty tricks.
And something, actually, one quick story. My sister was driving back up north, I think in Surprise, and they drove just a little fast through a light, not running a red or anything. Tripped a camera. Turns out that camera was actually placed outside of the precinct's jurisdiction, so she ended up winning the ticket.
Really? Okay. Yeah. But you had to fight it and go to court.
Yeah, I mean, which you should just do in general. You usually win. It's not so bad.
Right.
Freckles X20 on YouTube bought new this is actually a question I think about often. So they bought new hubcaps for their Model 3. They're supposed to increase the range. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. There's these aerodynamic hubcaps that you can get that cut wind resistance. And it goes back to the picture that we showed, aerodynamics. I'm not sure how much, but, it does make a difference.
Well, I see this all the time because you have wind tunnel tests that kind of show the air pressure that goes around wheels and such. And I always think about how, 50s, 60s cars, they just had flat, plate dome hubcaps. And then we moved away from that, and now the aero wheel design is kind of coming back. And what I think about often, too, is if mileage is so important on any kind of car, whether it's an EV or gas or whatever, why don't all of them use an aero wheel?
There are other things. There's tire technology, too, to cut the drag that the amount of rubber, on the road, so they have higher efficiency tires. But in today's world, people charge at home typically. You get 250, 300 miles or so. Losing a couple of miles isn't that big an issue for most people. But when you mentioned hubcaps, I remember the moon hubcaps in the last century. They were round. They didn't quite fill the whole wheel, though. But,
yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think those are the ones I was thinking of, as a matter of fact. I think it's only something to really consider if you're going long distances.
So welcome back, YouTube. Nolver's 53.
Hey!
Nolver's 3. Is it Nolver 53?
53, yeah.
All right. Sorry, my sunglasses cut my ability to see that far away at times. So there's one downside of wearing sunglasses.
5S on the internet, it's the same thing.
Now we're going to encourage a lot of people to say, well, why are you wearing them? All right. He's asking, Nolver 53 is asking, with EV offerings growing every year, it's obvious that EVs are here to stay. Do we think that there is still a future in our society for hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicles?
Boy, that's been controversial lately. Alex on Autos put out a compelling video in regards to hybrids.
Yeah.
And his conclusion is that not everybody should have a pure BEV or a pure gas car, that everybody should drive a hybrid. I'm on the position of, well, I mean, we've all got, different opinions, I think, throughout the whole show. My opinion is that there's room for everything. I think, the best thing you could do, for all the people living in majority in cities, the most sensible car would be an EV because you can charge at home if you have that access. The infrastructure is growing.
Yeah.
But for people who drive long distances or for people who just need to drive more often, get a gas car. Get a hybrid. If that fits your lifestyle, if you need that, go for it. I think there's room for all of it.
So my opinion, no, I don't see any reason for hybrids or plug-in hybrids because we're trying to get emission burners off the road. We're trying to eliminate fossil fuel burners, pollution. Yeah.
We have a comment that I got from Aaron, our social media person here, who
Okay.
sees this a lot. It's kind of related. We want to ask, do you think future politics could delay the EV movement?
Future politics?
Yeah. So I know there's tax incentives and things like that to help with
Yeah.
EV adoption. We're just wondering if politics or I guess bureaucracy in general will slow down the adoption rate.
Bureaucracy slows everything down.
Yeah.
Checkmate.
A good point. And of course, we're assuming that we're the hub of the political system on the planet. There are many other political systems in various countries. It just seems to me that the momentum currently is unexpected. No one was expecting this rapid EV adoption rate. And I think people are generally beginning to wake up to the fact that a couple of things are happening. We're killing the planet. And secondly, we are running out of these non-renewable resources. And the third thing is there's so much legislation now that will ban the production of cars.
That's what I was going to say too. Other countries are doing
And we
that.
all know that what's next is banning them on the roadways.
Yeah, the different approaches, I know, especially in American politics, given just how divided that they are currently.
Yeah.
But it is kind of fascinating that there is somewhat of a lot of agreement when it comes to the product itself. Because when we talk about EVs, there's really three big elements. You have the product itself, the car itself. You've got the infrastructure around it, and you've got the energy that's supposed to go into both of them. And how we're going to distribute that both now and in the future. How has that been distributed?
How's the grid going to keep up?
How is the grid going to keep up, right? The common question. Where's the place for fossil fuels in the future if there are any? And there's a lot of different conversations to be had among all of us because we are concerned. How do we continue to keep the same level of energy that we're expected, if not more, and allow it to cost less? Can we redistribute energy materials on the planet in order to do that? And there are more or less efficient ways of doing that, and that's why I'm a proponent for all the kinds of forms of energy. I'm not so against gas, I'm not so against fossil fuel that it can't be beneficial. And so if the distribution is there to allow people to have access to the energy we need in order to maintain and grow the infrastructure that we do have, then I think we need all the help we can get, whether it's fossil fuels or mineral fuel as it is when it comes to these lithium-based or sodium-based batteries and things like that. But we need to be able to have these conversations about where is the place for all of it, rather than going all in on one solution or all in on another. And that may be where the politics comes in about, people are convinced in one area, they're convinced about one solution, and they, are entitled to that opinion. So it's a matter of compromise and got a good conversation.
Good points. TickTock, hang in there with us. We enjoy having you guys and the rest of you as well. Looks like from Facebook, Chuck Longloy. Hi from upstate New York.
Hey, good morning to you.
I was actually raised in upstate New York, Rochester. Then I moved down to Bristol, the Finger Lakes region. It's you live in a beautiful part of the country, and it looks like red barchetta. Don't know what that is. Okay. And then Chris Barker, he's asking from YouTube, in 10 years, will it make more sense to recycle an electric car, or will battery replacement costs drop enough to make it worthwhile? We're going to talk a little bit more about battery changes in this session. It is amazing to me how quickly technology is changing because of financial incentives. There's a market, there's demand, and that's what drives innovation, industry, and business. Yes, battery technology will rapidly change and continue to do so, and Jesse's favorite source of energy is fusion.
Yep.
So we are well
Love it.
on our way to resolving a lot of these issues. Just to give you an example, there was a question to show you how much technology has changed. And I'll jump to another question that came in from Cora. The question went like this: if a Tesla gets struck by lightning, does it become even more electrically charged? Well, it's a cute notion.
Like that idea in the first Avengers movie where Thor strikes Iron Man with the lightning and then the chick gets the 400% charge.
So the first thing that jumped to my mind, if we can throw up a picture of the Leyden jar, was Leyden jar, all right? For those of you that remember anything from your high school chemistry classes, a Leyden jar is a device that can store static electricity. So I did a little bit of research on this, and I was fascinated by the timelines on this. And let me read you something here. A Leyden jar was invented by a German cleric, Ewald Georg von Kleist, in 1745, guys. Can you imagine that? They were actually moving electrons or storing electrons in 1745. That's 250 years ago, right? And then a Dutch scientist, Peter van Musschenbroek of Leiden, also discovered it the same year, independently. They weren't talking to each other. You know, back then we didn't have the internet. We didn't have rapid communication. There was no phone they could pick up and say, hey, what are you working on? Can we work on this together, right?
Yeah, that's 100 years away.
Yeah. So independently, the same year, these two guys came up with it, and the guy that got credit for it was the Dutch guy who lived in Leiden in Belgium, or in the Netherlands. All right. So what this was a Leyden jar was able to store static electricity. Now, they were aware of static electricity because if you take some wool and you rub it against some rubber well, they didn't have plastic back then. All right, so they must have had organic stuff that
Or
they
even
would
just,
maybe.
most wool or even just any dry environment.
So they would look at this quarter-inch charge that you would and say, what the heck? What is that, right? Well, these two guys found a way to store that energy. What they really did was they created the first capacitor. A capacitor is a device that stores electricity. And if you remember, one of our contemporary scientists in this country, Benjamin Franklin, also used the Leyden jar to do a number of experiments. So I guess my original point was that we've been working on electricity for over 200 years, and look at the amount of changes that have occurred just within the last few decades. It's been astronomical exponential. So my prediction is that yes, technology will continue to exponentially improve, and we're going to be laughing about, as we said in the last podcast, plugging cars into anything. Plugging is kind of a inefficient way of providing energy. Direct solar, for example, inductive coupled charging, and who knows what else will become available in the future.
There we go. From Manketness on YouTube. Hey, what do you think about flooded Teslas? Isn't the big environment problem if we can't repair them? So yeah, this kind of feeds back into that question of, is it going to be more economic? Is it going to be more sufficient or efficient, I should say?
Well, let me give you a perspective on that. Okay, flooded Teslas at auction. Some of them are beyond repair. I fully agree. They should not be repaired. It's not cost effective. Anything can be repaired if you throw enough money at it. What would happen to these cars? You take a standard Model S. It's about 90% aluminum, easily recyclable. Then you have a battery pack, 1,200 pound, full of lithium ion cells. You send that to Redwood Materials, and they've got a 0% waste stream, and they will be able to completely recycle that battery. So folks, none of this is going to end up in landfills polluting our groundwater and our environment. Even the steel, for example, in the control arms is recyclable. So I'm not terribly concerned about it. I think
a lot of those we
future's
can
bright.
repair. A lot of those we do repair. We buy those and try and get stuff out of there. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And
Unless
Gruber Motors does.
unless it's salt water, and
Yes.
the thing is full of salt water in the interior in the cabin. As I mentioned before, we got very good at spotting the extent of repair on a flood-damaged Tesla at the auctions because they put a chalk line. And from that chalk line, we're able to tell how high the water got inside the car and what modules were affected and how many wiring harness connecting points we were going to need to replace and rebuild. And there was a point of no return. Once it got into the screen, you know, the 17-inch screen in the center of a Model S, there's a Linux computer behind that. By the time the water hit that, forget it. It's not a cost-effective repair.
Oof. From Mo on TickTock, I asked you guys before how to learn about learning how to fix electric cars. They really like the channel.
You know, yeah, and as we pointed out, we're working on tutorials, but our bandwidth is very narrow to develop that. We don't have product yet. But again, I'm going to plug Rich Rebuilds. His electrified garage in New Hampshire, I've noticed has been offering training courses for EVs. So if you're interested, look up Electrified Garage and see what they have to offer for you.
Bill Wood on TikTok, they found evidence of crude batteries in Egyptian tombs.
Yeah. I remember reading about that. It wasn't quite the same shape and composition that we have, but...
Just the fact that they thought, hey, the lightning is in the sky and it can burn things, what else can it do?
It's kind of like Elon says, though. You start talking about the Ice Age and you're starting to go down into some serious rabbit holes. So there's a, you know, there is a school of thought that says that we have had advanced technology on this planet many times before.
Yep.
And then it just keeps
It gets
restarting.
wiped out.
Blew ourselves up with it or something.
I mean, the Atlanteans, for example, all mythical, at least as far as we're concerned, but they actually had allegedly an energy orb, a large glowing object sphere
and then it fails,
in the middle of
and it brings it down to the ocean.
and it was actually powering everything in their society.
I like the Black Panther 2 version of Atlantis. That's or the Aquaman version of Atlantis. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it is funny. My favorite fake theory is the concave Earth. So the reason why we're finding these ideas of past advanced technology is because the aliens are actually the mole people.
Oh, okay.
That was a joke I heard on another comedy podcast. I love that joke so much.
Moving right along here. It looks like TickTock, Hot Rail Rose. Where do you see converting older vehicles to all electric in the future? In the last podcast, we talked about the first manufacturer that we've seen, and there may be more, it's just what we're aware of, but Renault is actually developing electric drivetrain conversion packages for their legacy vehicles. They mentioned the Twizy, and I think there were a couple of others. As soon as it becomes attractive to the OEMs, the auto manufacturers, and the 2030 and 2035 moratoriums hit, where you can't build any more ICE vehicles, this is going to become a lucrative business because not everybody's going to want to scrap their 1966 Ford Mustang.
I wouldn't.
Or their 1968 Dodge Charger. And these electrification packages are fairly simple to install. We were at a Scottsdale Community College seminar a week ago. I was on the panel of EV business leaders. And after the show, we went out in the parking lot, and lo and behold, there were about 5 or 10 EV conversions done with legacy vehicles. There was a 50s Ford F-150 pickup truck, called it an E-150. Looked inside that engine compartment. It was a very simple installation. There was a 72 Cadillac, all 24 feet of it, or however long it was, that had been converted. In order to move that beast, they actually they installed 3 motors in tandem to get enough power to move this beast. But the point here being is, at some point, the auto manufacturers are going to be motivated because there's a market for it and there's revenue to be generated, conversion packages for their legacy vehicles. So you most likely at that point will be able to continue to drive that cherished, muscle car that you've been storing and enjoying on the weekends.
You know, nowadays the market is mostly it's mostly for enthusiasts, and what you'll often find is people pick up, old Tesla Model S batteries. They'll throw them in whatever car that they've got. I saw one where someone actually converted, I believe it was a Land Cruiser, into an EV.
Really?
Very limited range, at somewhere, maybe 100 miles or less. But nonetheless, people are doing it in their garage. It's kind of hilarious. And you've got the other side of it where companies like Legacy EV collaborated with the TfL guys over in Boulder, Colorado, and they built another F100 completely, not completely from the ground up, but they kind of had to do the same thing where they took old modules, and they actually just had a podcast that dug into a little bit of how that all works out. And it's kind of funny how you'll get less mileage, you'll get less range, but you get a lot more torque. So it's a great truck for in town. It's that kind of conversion, and so that's probably why a lot of people are going to go electric, because it's convenient. So we'll see what happens. I mean, gosh, if I could throw a couple batteries in my car and let that last forever, I would.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like Freckles X20 on YouTube is saying, I referred you guys to a Model S owner in Wisconsin, Tesla Model S. He's having battery problems. Thank you for that referral. We do appreciate it. TickTock, SoCal, asking, have you ever tried to test these capacitors in an experimental car? If we're talking about the Leyden jars, there's not enough energy there to run a car. And although there is such a thing as a supercapacitor battery that's being worked on, I'm not sure what we're referring to there.
Although maybe it's like, well, actually, that speaks to something that General Motors, I just saw this on Electric Vikings channel. Not necessarily I think it's a new kind of capacitor, but it's essentially a wireless battery management system. So it's a sort of inductive way of allowing a battery to manage itself, because nowadays, if they get too hot, then they'll either lose energy or shut down. If they get too cold, they'll lose energy and shut down. Teslas have their own battery management system.
Cool.
But with a wireless one, now the battery can actually take care of itself without the need for plugging in or anything like that. It's an interesting concept. So it might add a little bit of complexity to some of these computers that we're putting in, but computers get more complicated every year. So
a couple of things. Sandy's team, Sandy Monroe with Monroe & Associates. Corey was, I saw a brief video today. They're at the Chicago Auto Show right now. And they were disappointed because there wasn't a strong EV presence or representation. Honda, for example, did not bring the BZX4. They had all of their ICE vehicles there, which is confusing. Toyota, sorry, yes, yep. Which brings me to another topic. The European Union took another step to banning the sale of new petrol and diesel cars. They approved a date of 2035 to eliminate the ability to manufacture or sell fossil fuel burners. 50% of this takes place in 2030, which is only 7 years away. However, they are, and how many member nations are there? 27 of them. It's a 27-member bloc. They are allowing car manufacturers that make less than 1,000 vehicles per year to continue to be exempted from these new rules. Of course, that will work until the world adopts a ban on driving ICE vehicles, which we feel is the next step as the problems with the planet continue. Now here's a funny one. They said Porsche began synthetic fuel production late last year, so they're still dabbling with some sort of fossil fuel, but synthetic. Even Lamborghini expressed an interest in exploring alternative fuels. Well, guess what, guys? If you haven't developed a product by 2030 and 35, you may not have any cars to sell anymore. So it's time to jump on the bandwagon, these exotic car manufacturers. We think that Ferrari is going to do well with their new CEO. Benedetto Vigno, I think was the name, who is fairly progressive, was praising Tesla for their ability to change the planet, basically, focusing us on alternative energy transportation. And then they talked about Toyota experimenting with hydrogen-fueled combustion engines. Again, it's an interesting notion. It's definitely emissions-free. I mean, you've got water coming out the tailpipe, but I'm not sure that all of that technology is going to be a revenue-generating opportunity for any manufacturer when the simplicity of an EV so far outweighs a hydrogen-based propulsion system.
And for a move like that, it is important to realize that it is a ban on the sale of new gas cars. So they're allowed to continue to make them until 2035. And at that point, there's nothing stopping you from driving older ones, but it is an artificial way of driving the market toward that kind of demand. Even though a lot of people may not be in a position to own an electric vehicle or operate one, depending on their lifestyle, depending on whatever, by then. But it's definitely going to create that shift so that it's more doable by 2035.
We'll have fusion by then.
We'll have fusion.
I'm
okay.
holding my breath. 2035, that's 12 years to perfect fusion. I think we'll have it.
Well, 7.
Here's the future. Here's the future I see.
Yeah.
All right, 2035 rolls up. And, there's still people that are going to be driving their ICE cars because they, can't afford to get an EV because they don't believe in it yet. And, but can you imagine what's going to happen to the cost of fossil fuels? The refining structure needs to be fed, and it's based on a certain amount of volume. And when that volume continues to decline, the costs have only one-where to go but up. Those tanks are still there, the infrastructure is still there, the machinery to process and refine fuels is still there. It's fixed cost. So it may be cost prohibitive to buy fossil fuel burners in the future, and that may resolve the problem and get them off the road completely.
And it is possible for all the countries around the world that maybe can't afford a complete shift to electric right now.
Yeah.
America, Russia, China, I believe it's not Germany, but there's a couple other nations that are the biggest oil exporters in the world. Now, let's say America itself just stops using as much oil, but it still produces the same amount. Well, then it's got plenty to sell to these other nations that do need it and allow them to catch up faster so that all of us are on a much, a less fossil fuel driven equilibrium, let's say.
Platform, yeah. We got a bunch of questions. Let's just go through them quickly.
Oh, sure,
and
yeah.
catch some. Instagram, MaxLay06. Our thoughts on Lucid Motors. My personal thoughts is the Saudis own this thing, basically. They're not going anywhere. It's their second act, and they're gonna support that company until hell freezes over. So Lucid Motors is solid in my opinion, and we don't give stock advice, but man, at like $10, $11 a share, that seems like an incredible bargain based on what Tesla did.
Well, the motors that they're putting in those things are pretty incredible.
Oh yeah.
From Brandon on TickTock, the green screen shows up as a green screen. It does on TickTock,
we know, we're still working on it. It's not us. It's a vendor that's providing our streaming services that's been uncooperative.
They can see it on YouTube and Facebook and every other platform.
Spotify, yep, you'll be able to see it.
Go to the other platforms and you can see.
But we do love you guys on TickTock. From Ricky Bronikowski, a capacitor bank is not a battery. True. But a wireless battery is possible. Also true. Well, in the case of inductive charging a battery like that, yes.
Well, charging method could be wireless, yeah.
Oh,
I
sure.
would really like to hear more from Ricky about this, what he means by a wireless battery. Fascinating.
Could be talking about inductive coupling.
TickTock, SoCal, I think the battery of an electric car can possibly be 5 times bigger than lithium ion, and that means capacitors for storage purposes have to be tested. Well, capacitors are a method of storage, but certainly not as efficient as the types of batteries that we have now. These days, capacitors are used more in electronic circuitry for wave shaping and filtering. Jiminy Stack, welcome, local EV expert from Facebook. For your information, Pete, he says, Red Barchetta is a story about an Armera where all motor vehicles were banned.
Ah, okay.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that.
Should be
might
better
interesting.
red. Yeah, I will look that up. Red Barchetta, okay.
From Hot Rails Rose on TickTock, it's crazy how Europe wants emissions-free vehicles, but Germany gave Tesla so many roadblocks.
Well, again, I'm German. I understand their mentality. They have to go through a certain OCD process before they can accept change, and they're rule followers. Remember, we mentioned that earlier. They're not intentionally blocking things like this, but they're not quite like the Chinese who, cut some corners to let technology evolve and improve. And environmental issues aren't quite as important. So I'm not sure whether Tesla or other countries are going to continue to give Germany a chance to become the European hub for electronics and new technology like this. I believe, as our video stated, go to YouTube, you'll see my message to the Germans. Cool it with all the regulations. Cool it with the trees being cut down. You can replant them. Or the lizards and the snakes that are going to have to be displaced.
We can find out.
Yeah. You know, let's save the planet. Let's look at the bigger mission here, which is to get fossil fuel burners off the roads. Germany, you have one of the most beautiful countries on the planet. If you can get those fossil fuel burners out of the Alps, for example, the air would be cleaner and it would certainly be an improvement. All right, TickTock, Bill Wood. How are you, Bill? Welcome. Welcome back. He says, farmers are still milking cows by hand. Fossil fuels will be around for a long time.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of the giant farmers, I've actually had the opportunity to meet a lot of farmers who work on the more industrial side of farming, and they're able to get an absurd amount of milk from these cows from the machines that they use for milking artificially, and it's somewhere, I mean, thousands of gallons a day.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But you're right, a lot of farmers, you know, if you got a cow on your little plot of land, you're milking by hand, that's true. Yeah, and that it goes to what we were saying earlier, you know, there's room for all of it.
I see a solar contraption mounted on the back of the cow that automatically milks the cow, separates it, and stores it in containers. I mean,
like
technology, yeah.
A little umbrella keeps the cow cool and happy.
Let's talk about sodium batteries. We try to get to that topic every single time. Here we
are. We did it.
In a nutshell. All right, lithium ion has upsides and downsides. The downsides, obviously, are it's highly volatile, it's flammable, but it's a great way to store an enormous amount of energy. So sodium ion batteries apparently are more plentiful. They're 2.3% of the world's crust is sodium.
That's a lot of sodium.
That's a lot of salt. And sodium is over 1,000 times more abundant than lithium. And it's easier to extract. Let me give you a perspective on cost. In 2012, 11 years ago, lithium cost $4,450 a ton, $4,400 a ton. And this is what the car manufacturers are using to build batteries, right? 10 years later, it's $78,000 a ton, which is a 1,600% increase just in the last decade. Well, it's no surprise, demand. Everybody needs lithium these days to make EVs. So sodium offers an attractive alternative. It turns out that sodium ion technology is about $15 per kW, versus lithium, which is $101 per kW. Now, can you imagine what will happen to the cost of EVs once we switch over to sodium ion batteries?
Now, it is important to know, I don't think it's as dense, as energy dense, as a lithium ion battery, or even a lithium iron phosphate battery.
True. One of the downsides was that you don't get quite the same range. 400 miles, maybe 320 miles. But again, we're taking a whole lot of upsides and inserting them, and with all technology, it improves. So going into it, I'm not concerned that there's a slight drop in the amount of range that's available.
And I think the important thing to know is with a technology like this, when it comes to its upsides, downsides, well, what it does is provide an opportunity to find out where it's supposed to go. Maybe we can keep lithium ion for EVs and use these salt batteries in other places where we're using lithium currently that we shouldn't be. So it's really exciting because now we get to see all the opportunities that can come up from using different battery technologies in different places that matter.
Yeah. Here's a good question from Instagram from Devrari Vinod. He says, hi, good day. What is more efficient in terms of environmental change, hydrogen vehicles or electric vehicles?
Oh, electric.
You know, I don't know that, but I think that would be a great research project.
Well, there's been a lot of research already put out, and the reason why I think someone like Toyota is so interested in hydrogen is because in certain cases, if you want to use hydrogen, let's say hydrogen fuel cells, well, those they're energy dense. Hydrogen is a super abundant resource, so it is possible. It just creates a lot of complexity and cost raising for your technology. But hypothetically, yeah, that's a great way to put it. But if we're talking about just pure hydrogen, those engines are not designed to use hydrogen. They're meant to run on ethanol gas. They're meant to run on, ethanol and petrol. So, you can't just swap the system over. In fact, people have already discussed what that would look like if, let's say, we were to replace all of the gasoline in America, keep the same system, keep the same tubes, and just fill it with hydrogen. The reality is you can't. It takes an insane amount of pressure to be able to house hydrogen, let alone a lot of real estate. So it's not commercially viable ever to use hydrogen as a substitute for gas. You can't even put it in the same tank. Again, back to hydrogen fuel cells, if you want to use it in an electric context, sure. But we have other technologies like lithium iron phosphate batteries or lithium ion batteries that can store that energy more densely in a smaller space. So hydrogen's a weird give and take. Now, again, not to bash it entirely. It is great in certain other instances, but for cars, I'd avoid it.
Yeah, okay. TickTock, Wendell Wall. He says, what's with the sunglasses? Do you think you're rock stars?
I don't think, I know.
Exactly. Now, the question, or the answer I have to that is, do you think people walked up to Karl Lagerfeld and said, what's with the sunglasses? Or Ralph Lauren? Or Morpheus? Or the Blues Brothers? No, they kind of accept the fact that they're going to wear sunglasses, and they must have a good reason for it.
Which we have a good reason.
We will reveal it at some point. So Wendell Wall, become one of our regular audience members. Continue to watch our podcasts, and eventually we will have a huge reveal for you, and we will enlighten everyone why we're doing this.
From Bill Wood on TickTock, if people saw how they mine cobalt and lithium in South Africa, people would change their mind about EVs. There was a great video that popped up on the Joe Rogan Experience about someone who was able to go to this mine, and and it is unfortunate. It's a very bad situation when it comes to the industry in receiving these resources. If we've addressed it before on this show, it's a perfectly valid point that in order to actually access the material needed for these batteries, it is unfortunately a really bad situation there. And while it gives a lot of opportunity, one, to be able to find other places to mine it in a way that's much more ethical.
Well, let's put it in perspective. This is one mine, and I saw the same video, and it was appalling. There were couple thousand people basically barefoot digging stuff out of the ground. There are other lithium mines that are quite high tech. But again, it's the law of supply and demand. It's cost, economics, all that plays into it. And, the auto manufacturers can't control where this raw material comes from in all cases. The supply chain definitely is one place that they have some control. But, raw materials like that get moved around quite a bit before they end up at the final location.
So luckily, there's enough market incentive for us to be aware of that and try to be better about where we extract these resources. Sorry, Jesse, you were going to say something.
No, you're good. I was just going to pull something up for what we were talking about a little earlier about farming still being done by hand.
Yeah.
You just pull this.
It's not common anymore. That's for sure.
Well, I'm going to show you the future, and we're going to do a full episode on artificial intelligence soon.
Whoa!
So take a look at this.
We're excited about that. AI is.
This is a TickTock that I found a while ago.
Oh, the drone apple pickers.
Mm-hmm. It's all run by AI.
It is amazing. Yeah, no one is there to monitor him.
This is like a Roomba in an apple orchard, except instead of picking stuff off the ground, it's actually be able to see ripe fruit on the trees and make informed decisions about which one to pick and not.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've had the opportunity to see and work with great farmers of America, and not all of them I think are going to be able to implement something like this immediately, but it's definitely cool to know that it's there. And
I'm not worried about taking people's jobs away. I mean, how many people in high school told their career counselor, I want to be an apple picker? So, this sort of thing lends itself to AI, to machinery, to automation.
That allows people to do the things they want to do.
Mm-hmm. YouTube. Mark, Manketness, how are you? Welcome back. It is really complicated to change the minds of some petrol heads. In Germany, people are attached to combustion technology, especially when many jobs depend on it.
Oh, I would say it's not just Germany. I'd say it's everywhere. I mean, think of how big the auto industry is from all these OEMs that sell gas cars and weren't ready to pivot.
Sure. Instagram, Devrari Vinod. We as Indians are investing in a lot of green hydrogen. What is your view about this?
You know, India is becoming a big hub for electric vehicles as well.
Are they?
They're getting on the map, and I wish I could remember the name of the company specifically, but yeah, India has been producing a big amount, or they're planning to have a big influence on the EV market. Given the population density, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, we'll see as this evolves. Hydrogen and electric vehicle technology is definitely on the forefront currently. The good news is that what's being dumped is fossil fuel burners in the process.
Just so you guys know, we're at 55 minutes.
All right. Hey, we got a strong 5 minutes, it looks like. We got a great couple comments here from Pino Mastriani from YouTube. Cobalt was mined before EVs. It used to be used to remove sulfur, or sorry, it is used to remove sulfur from diesel fuel.
And glass, etc. Okay.
Well, there you go. It's not just EVs driving a problem. It's been a material we've used for a long time.
TickTock, Hot Rail Rose. I bought my Model S batteries for repair. I was so impressed with your shop. How immaculate. Brought it to our shop. Well, thank you. Must be local.
Very cool. Or maybe not local. I mean, you guys get them from pretty much all over the world, don't you?
Yeah, the Roadsters primarily. Well, that's true. Model S's too. Can you guys do me a favor and throw up a picture of a wind generator? This one really had me impressed.
Oh, you mean the excavator plugged in, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yep. What we have here, this is in Vienna, Austria, and there's a wind farm there. And if you notice, there's an excavator that is doing the grading, developing this wind farm, expanding it, it looks like. And it is all electric. And it is getting a charge through that extension cord from the wind generator.
Right into the, oh, that's
so
kind of rad.
You have a complete closed loop system there.
It's kind of like a vacuum when you go around the house and you have to plug in and replug in as you're going. But you get around the whole house and you do it on the same place.
So this, I think, really epitomizes the new day and age that we're in, renewable resources. I find this very inspiring. There's no diesel fuel going into this excavator. And what the article said was they plug this thing in at night. By morning, it has a full charge, and it continues its day's chores of moving rocks around and grading so that they can put up more windmills.
There you go. That's kind of fun. Well, you know, it's how a lot of people are making a good case for electric trucks, having them in town and doing exactly that. You know, you have a cheap little electric work truck that gets a job done throughout the day. You can kind of plug it in, charge it overnight, and boom, you got a full tank the next day to keep doing work.
Very efficient. So, have you been wondering about the Tesla Cybertruck, right? Everybody is, it's 2 years overdue. We want it now. We're tired of waiting. And all right. Again, Tesla is saying that this fall they're ramping up production. They'll be releasing product next year in 2024 in first part of the year. So anyway, in the meantime, consumers have been joining a wait list for the Ford F-150 Lightning. And Ford has taken over 200,000 reservations for the Lightnings. I even hear horror stories where people go to the Ford dealers, and which also I think are going extinct eventually, dealers in general, but playing the game of marking it up above MSRP because they can, because there's such a strong demand for it. And sometimes the markups are ridiculous, you know, well into the 10, 20, 30, even 50% markups over MSRP. So the problem, though, is that Ford has been struggling with production. Currently, there's a hold on the batteries because of some technical issues. So I thought, well, let's see what the Cybertruck pre-orders is. And remember now, Ford has 200,000 backed up pre-orders. Tesla has 1.6 million pre-orders for the Cybertruck. Now, granted, this is a $100 fully refundable deposit, which is not part of a legally binding agreement. But look at the financial aspect in this. With even $100 times 1.6 million, that means that Tesla has pocketed $162 million in interest-free money from this reservation deposit alone. And granted, even if only 10% of those people actually end up buying the Cybertruck and asking for a refund, that's still a substantial amount of vehicles being sold, and it allows Tesla to ramp up.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And well, there's two things I'd love to add to that. One, when it comes to F-150 Lightning reservations, keep in mind a lot of the time, a lot of things nowadays that you see on dealer lots, any Lightning that you see on a dealer lot right now was an abandoned custom build from another customer because they decided not to go through with the purchase.
Was that right?
Because every single Ford F-150 Lightning had to be built by the customer in order to actually get it to shipment.
Sure.
But after it got to the dealership, and between markups and official Ford raising the price recently, you had even the base LT, or not the LT, the base LT work truck F-150, it's somewhere around $60,000 now. It used to be $40,000. So it's not just a dealer markup. There's also Ford markups, and the industry at large is raising prices. But unfortunately, that means that a lot of these Lightnings are going to be left on dealer lots because people just couldn't afford it. So it's a high upfront cost. There's two Lightnings I actually saw in Tempe the other day. I saw one of them yesterday. And all I wanted to ask the owner was like, how? What do you do to get that? But the other quick thing I wanted to add for the Cybertruck too, we've also been seeing potential LiDAR added to the Cybertruck as well as the Semi.
Okay.
So Tesla's back to using LiDAR, hopefully. That was kind of big news. We might look into a little bit of that.
Sure.
See what they do with it.
So if you guys can throw up a picture of the Alia 250 EVTOL.
And EVTOL.
FTOL.
EVTOL? EVTOL?
We got this question actually at Scottsdale Community. When are they going to have flying airplanes? Well, guess what? They already do.
Well, planes do fly, but
Yes.
electric
EV,
planes.
sorry. Yes.
There we go.
EV, electric EV airplane. So the range on this, and it looks like a drone, doesn't it? It's got the props that are going to pick the plane up, and then I'm assuming it's going to swivel toward the front to propel it or begin to angle. The range is 250 nautical miles. Not real impressive. You're not going to go to Europe in this or to Asia, but you get around,
It's an
the
air
state
taxi.
with it. Yeah. Speed up to 170 miles an hour. That's quite normal. Charges in 50 minutes. That's just under an hour. So theoretically, you go fly somewhere. It would take about 50 minutes for baggage, disporting the airplane, all of that. And it seats with pilot up to 5.
Wow.
So looks like we're starting to move aviation into EV.
Now that photo looks like it does have a sort of quad propeller drone design. So it is funny that I wonder if it's anything like the old cargo planes of yore. I forget what they're called, the actual model, but you know what I'm talking about?
The Harrier.
Harriers, yeah.
I know what you're talking about. So the company that makes this is Beta Technologies. They completed their first New York City test flight of this electric, and they call it electric vertical takeoff and landing. That's where the eVTOL comes from. And they call it an air taxi. The firm has partnered with Blade Air Mobility to offer air taxi services by 2026. It's partnering with Blade Air Mobility, handling passenger bookings, okay. And of course, the mileage range 250 in as little as 50 minutes. It'd be interesting to see what the plane tickets for this cost.
5-10 years, we'll see it on a Lyft app or an Uber app.
Yeah.
And you can get, actually, I'm pretty sure they experimented with that a little bit. I think Uber did, where you could get like a Uber Black private helicopter ride somewhere in the city. So I'm down. Let's take a ride.
Yeah.
How cool would that
Sounds
be?
like fun. TickTock, Michael Schul, welcome. His question is, how do you plan to deal with auto market crash? Interesting, auto companies are offering special financing again.
Recession is on the rise, unfortunately. It may be much more difficult. Loaning already is extremely expensive because interest rates are extremely high.
Now, what is Bill Wood saying here from TickTock?
The plane's called the Osprey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think he's referring to the
Right, with the props.
Yes.
Yeah, vertical takeoff.
Ospreys.
Outstanding.
Okay, guys, we are at 1:05.
Hey!
1 hour
All
and 5 minutes.
So if you guys have any last-minute questions, we're here. Feel free to ask them.
Real quick, we had Sasha. I don't think we got that one up there. It says greets with a Z from Germany.
Hey!
Oh, I did not see that. No. Thank you. Welcome from Germany. Must be late there.
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, welcome, good morning and good night, I suppose, to all of our viewers. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We'll see you guys Thursday morning, 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on all the same platforms as today: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify. We love to get to see you all there.
Please go check us out on Spotify. We need
Especially Spotify.
Yeah, we need help on Spotify. They changed the rating. They moved the goalpost. If we got to 50 subscribers,
50 listeners, what they
50
listeners, what
all
they
right,
call it.
we would have had some sort of a monetization
Hey,
possibility.
you guys are the best, so we'd love to see you on Spotify. Go check it out. It's the same great show, but now you get to have it on Spotify as well.
So going back to moving the goalpost for a moment here, yeah, they changed it to 100 overnight.
Wow.
And we were caught in a squeeze there. So we're at, 40 now?
Yep.
We need 60 more.
Yeah, but we got the best viewers on the planet.
We
so
do.
We love you guys. Hopefully you can send us some love and just go follow us on Spotify. We'd really appreciate it. And other than that, we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Oh, one more quick one. TickTock, Boatman52US. Great job again from Pennsylvania.
Hey.
Thank you. We will see you guys Thursday this week.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
There we go. Thank you.